It was the first time I said I love you to my wife, and she said thank you. And I was like, yeah. So that was, and that lasted for about a month. That was a very
part of his religion.
Yeah, part of his religion, and I can understand why he didn't he wanted to get moving
because then
he's not having sex.
Well, that's not the only reason.
I mean, that's a good reason to put a flame on your butt.
Strong incentive. Extremely driven.
Yeah, he grinds and grinds.
Right, and knows hard work.
Yeah.
Right. So to be hired as in-house counsel by a major syndicate, and also say, you know what, I'll only do it if I can do like the nitty-gritty stuff and actually learn the production side of it. So he is every foresight. And
continuing on with Ben Shapiro destroys the Nelk Boys and talks presidential run with Kanye. We started watching this yesterday. We're going to pick back up. We're around 13 minutes last time. If you haven't seen the first video, go back, take a look. It was more about Ben Shapiro's views on gay Disney movies. Movies that had gay characters in it. And we kind of give our take a little bit as well.
Without having to deal with all the crap that I have to take. It's bad enough that we have to have 24/7 security on my house. Like, they shouldn't have to deal with the predations of people who are coming for them on the internet.
Has that affected like any of your content, like kind of your family and keeping them safe?
No, I kind of say what I want to say. It's just affected our budget for security.
Right. For sure.
We spend a lot of money on security.
Because when you used to go to like colleges and stuff like that, like people would show up and like protest pretty much, right?
Yeah, that's died down a little bit, I would say. And frankly, I think that's a smart PR move by people on the left not to come and make a big fuss, because when they come and make a big fuss, all they're doing is drawing attention to their own intolerance for opposing viewpoints. But I mean, there was a time when it was pretty wild. I mean, the Berkeley example being the most obvious.
What happened in that scenario?
That was where I was invited by the College Republicans to speak, and Young Americans Foundation to speak at Berkeley. And there was a big protest. People were very upset about it. And there were so many threats that it required, I believe, 600 police officers. Something like that. And
600?
They'd call them the stadies. Like they basically like loaded up on the security there. And I'm like, what in the world is this? And then people were protesting out front, chanting speeches, violence. They blocked out the top half of the arena because they were afraid that people were going to, supposedly, they were afraid that people were going to go into the top part of the arena and throw things, stuff like that. And that was when I was wearing, they made me wear a bulletproof vest. Like it's, absurd kind of stuff. Now, I always tend to think.
Did any party think like, yo, maybe I shouldn't go speak there?
No, generally I think it's overkill.
Yeah.
my usual reaction, because I'm an idiot, is like, well, why am I wearing a vest? Why do I need security? I don't need any of this crap. Like, what's somebody going to do? Mm-hmm. And my security's general take is, yeah, it's stupid overkill until the minute it's not stupid overkill.
Sure.
And so they have to constantly be pulling me back.
Yeah.
I don't, it's no fun having to walk around with security all the time. And now, so my kids are used to it, and we live in a very protected, gated area, so they don't have it all the time.
Right.
And again, the Jewish schools they go to Jewish schools, so the Jewish schools are very staffed up in terms of security, so they're kind of used to it. But it's a very weird moment. It's all very strange.
Me and Kyle were talking before this. We haven't really heard like your story, so we're talking about your kids. Where did you inherit like your beliefs? When did you get into like all the politics, all that?
So when did you start making content?
Content.
So I've been making content. I'm 38 now. I started making content when I was 17, maybe. So I was
on
over 20
like
years.
What platform?
So I grew up in Burbank, California. My mom was a Hollywood executive. She worked on reality TV. My dad was a composer.
Were they religious? Sorry to cut you off.
Originally, no. So they were kind of quasi interested in religion. They only became fully Orthodox when I was 11.
Okay.
So I remember eating a KFC and McDonald's, for example.
Yeah.
Not bad. Mm-hmm. I will say. But it was when we were 11. That's when the family became fully Orthodox. I'd gone to public school until I was about 8 or 9. And then I went to private school for a couple of years. Then I went back to public school for part of middle school. Then I was in private school, Jewish day school, for high school. I skipped during that process 3rd grade and 9th grade. So I finished high school when I was 16 and went to UCLA. And when I went to UCLA, I thought that I was actually going to double major in music and genetic science. That's what I was interested in at the time. I was a concert level violinist at the time. Also, I'd started playing when I was 5. And so I had, you have to make a choice at a certain point when you're 15, 16 years old, if you're going to go for it, like try to be the concert level violinist, you have to be practicing 6 to 8 hours a day. And so do you want to basically make that your life, or do you want to go do something else? My dad, who is a musician, and my mom, who was married to a musician, was like, this is a bad idea. You're going to go get a job. You're going to go on a career path that doesn't end with you, playing in a bar somewhere. And so I end up going to UCLA. I'd wanted to go to Johns Hopkins, actually. And my parents were like, you're 16, you're not going anywhere. So I lived at home while I was in college. So I stepped on campus, and very quickly I saw, kind of how left. I never really thought of myself as super political. I mean, I knew I was political and I was interested in politics. I liked history. I liked talking about political issues and current events. But it was really on campus that I was kind of faced with an alternative point of view that I really wanted to speak about. And so one of the first things that happened is I walked on campus, I picked up the UCLA student newspaper, the Daily Bruin, and there was an editorial comparing the then Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, this is 2001, to Adolf Eichmann, as in like the facilitator of the Holocaust. And so I walked into the Daily Bruin offices and I said, can I write a counter to this? I would have been 16 at the time. I said, can I write a counter to this? And they're like, yeah, sure, write a counter. So I wrote a counter. And then a couple of weeks later, they came to me and they said, we have a perspective column from somebody, and you're the only person who's on the right that we've ever heard of. And so can you write the countervailing point of view? So that turned into every couple of weeks, we would do like a point counterpoint column in the Daily Bruin. And then I applied for and got a kind of regular columnist position, just writing my own column at the Daily Bruin as the token conservative on the paper. It was very well read. And then after doing that for maybe a year, so I was 17, I turned to my dad and I said, you've been reading my stuff. Do you think my stuff is good enough to go in a real paper, not just a college paper? And he said, yeah, actually I do. Let me do some research. So he looked up online a syndicator, like who places columns in papers. And so the place he came up with was Creator Syndicate. Creator Syndicate was the syndicator at the time of people on the left like Molly Ivins and people on the right like David Limbaugh. Michelle Malkin was big at Creators at the time. And so my dad gave me their address, and there was sort of a form that you could just send in your columns. So I sent in my columns cold. And about 3 weeks later, they called, and they didn't know really how old I was. And so they said, we want you to write. They knew I was young. They didn't know how young I was. They said, we want you to write a weekly column for us. So they were going to syndicate the column, which means they were going to put it in a bunch of different papers at one time. So 10, 12. Now I think it runs in maybe 150 or 200 papers every week. So I've been writing a syndicated column since I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And pretty much everything dumb. I don't say everything. I say dumb stuff fairly routinely, but most of the dumb stuff that I've said was between the ages of maybe 17 and 24, which is why I say like people make bad decisions at that time. You have more radical viewpoints when you're younger. You tend to moderate a little bit, at least I wouldn't say moderate as much as become more realistic about the world as you get older.
Just want to stop real quick and talk about how successful he was so young.
Yeah.
Went to UCLA, started writing a column for the college. Then he said he got with his dad, and his dad maybe
did some research and found
like a certain syndication publication, I guess. He sent it to him cold. That's super
and they
good.
picked it up. Yeah.
They picked it up, and then they started syndicating college columns. And this is all between the ages of 17 and 24. So this guy's super successful. Well, I don't want to say super successful is probably not the right term to use, but certainly having some pretty good success, right?
I mean, I think just beyond success, it's just like very bright. Very bright at a very young age.
Yeah.
And also even just to touch on like his mentioning how he was a violinist and
I didn't even
on that level, on orchestra level.
He said concert level, right?
And so
to be concert level, you have to be doing at least 6 hours a day.
At least 6. So there's discipline in itself right there. But also, so he has this formal training, but to play an instrument already speaks
volumes, right?
Yeah. Of some level of intelligence. I mean, it takes to be able to read music and all that good stuff.
Sure.
So
super bright.
But yeah, so I was writing a syndicated column when I was 17. My first book came out when I was 20 about left-wing bias on college campuses called Brainwashed. That came out in 2003, 2004. And then I went to, I ended up going to Harvard Law School. I wrote another couple books while I was at Harvard Law. I came out of Harvard Law when I was 23. And then I actually thought I was just going to go into law practice. I worked at a law firm called Goodwin Proctor, which is a major law firm, corporate law firm in the real estate market. There was only one problem. I joined a real estate law firm in 2007, which is the worst time in human history to join a real estate law firm.
Yeah.
So the market absolutely tanks. I'm sitting in a beautiful office overlooking Century City and then all the way down to the ocean and doing nothing all day long. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't bear it. I hated it. Also, if you're a first year associate at a law firm, you basically sit there all day and you just read page numbers. It's like, is this paragraph properly formatted? You have to read for typos. Is the comma in the right place? I'm not that detail oriented. In fact, I'm so not detail oriented that my assistant has to like text me to take out the garbage. I just delegate everything. So this is like the worst job in history for me. So about 8 months in, I turned to, I'd met my wife when I came back to Los Angeles. She was at UCLA at the time. She was a junior at UCLA. And we had been dating we dated for like 2.5 months before we got engaged. And so we were already engaged at this point.
2.5 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was, you see what you like, move fast, right? Take it off the market.
I like it.
Yeah.
That is smart.
Listen.
2.5 months. Jeez.
When you know, you know.
I guess. Well, real quick, he kind of glossed over it. He went to UCLA,
Right.
Then he went
for
to-
his undergrad.
and then he went to Harvard Law. He wrote a couple books while he was in Harvard Law. I think he said he graduated at 23, or he went to Harvard Law at 23. I don't remember which one.
Mhm.
And then he ended up going into a real estate corporate or a real estate law firm.
Yeah.
But he ended up hating it.
Right.
So I guess we'll.
And then
find out
also
more.
to to recognize that I'm miserable here and this is not working out for me. This is not something I want to do.
Yeah.
Most usually first year associates will hang on at least for that first year because that's kind of like your stepping stone is
Sure.
that first law firm. So, but
2.5 months though after you meet your wife. But did he say they got engaged 2.5 months later?
mhm.
That's fast. That's real fast.
I encourage it. I think that people dating for 5-6 years at a time, if you can't make your mind up within year one, I think that you
Yeah,
probably need to move on.
I agree.
I think people date for too long. They tend to talk themselves into
Damn,
long
you're gonna
term.
get us in trouble here
Yeah,
now,
bro.
bro.
Yeah.
Well, listen. Whenever I meet people who are say how long have you been dating, they'll say 2 years. I'm like, so what are you waiting for? Either get married or get off the pot. Like
That is true.
like
People are scared of commitment, though, right? 'Cause then it's a lifelong thing after that.
for sure. But you shouldn't. But my view is different when it comes to dating than everybody else's, right? Because I was always dating for marriage. So my father had always said, and I think he's right, that you only meet the person you're going to marry when you already believe that it's time to get married. People tend to
Makes sense.
meet a person, date a person. They're like, oh, I'll fall into marriage. I'll fall in love with them, and then I'll decide to get married. Wrong. You decide you're going to get married, then you meet the person you can fall in love with because you're thinking in a different way. When you're dating for marriage, you have a set of values that are in your head. What do you want your life to look like? How do you want your life to be structured? What do you want to teach your kids? What kind of community? Like these are really important questions because Jonathan Haidt, the psychologist, social psychologist, he talks about sort of the trajectory of relationships and love. And what he says is that at the very beginning, this is true for every relationship. At the very beginning, there's a lot of passionate love and very low levels of what he calls companionate love. Companionate love is sort of like trust and knowledge of the other person. You don't know the other person. How could you? Passionate love is like, I want to be with them all the time. A lot of sexual attraction here. We got like the sparks are flying. And in every relationship, after a couple of years, you start to see a decline in the passionate love and an increase in the companionate love, which is why you'll see couples who are 70 years old. And it's not like they're, going at it 24 hours a day. It's more like they feel like they're integrated with one another. It's almost like one unit. And so when you're dating for marriage, yes, the passionate love will be there, but you're also trying to look beyond what that 2-year passionate love period is going to look like to what is the rest of your life going to look like. And that sets up a whole different expectation of the person you're dating and for yourself, right? Why are you actually in the room with this person? Is it because they're good looking and because they're sexy? Or is it because this is a person you actually want to spend serious amounts of time with and maybe commit to?
Yeah.
And so that sets up, like my first date with my wife was like a 3-hour date where we went to Coffee Bean in Santa Monica. And then we walked on the beach. This is before it was taken over by drug addicts and the mentally ill. And we walked for 3 hours on the beach talking about like free will and determinism and religion.
I wonder if that mindset
Mhm.
on dating, or when it comes to dating, has been instilled by his religion.
Yeah. I had a feeling there was a correlation, but there may not be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because like, let's assume he's around 23 years old.
Yeah. But I
I
feel like
wasn't
he would have mentioned if it was connected to his religion.
Yeah, maybe.
'Cause he seems like obviously very open to
Mhm.
speak about whatever.
Maybe he just wanted to.
Yeah, I actually
I'm
like this value and this method, dating for marriage.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with that. I
Mhm.
just wondered, like at 23, that's certainly not where I was
Right.
at 23. And I wonder if it's. Well, he's still with his wife. He has kids. He seems happy. So it worked out well for him. But I wonder how many 23-year-olds nowadays would do well dating for marriage. I don't know what the dating market's like. I don't know that many young people to know whether or not, how the dating life is going. What do you think?
Same. Yeah,
This seems to be like something that's more healthy, but is it realistic? I don't know how realistic this way of.
It's really a good value to have. I think I like this method.
Sure.
I could appreciate it.
Yeah.
Also, like
And
a good point. Like after 5-6 years, right, when that passion dissipates and actually turns into
You said that
companion.
after 2 years.
After 2, okay. So yeah, so it's like if you're sitting in a relationship for anything, I guess over 2 years, yeah, I don't know. I forgot my point.
I think maybe what we were talking about, because he brought up that you should be dating for, like you should be like keeping in mind that you want to get married, dating for marriage,
right?
And looking past the passion and trying to figure out like kind of like what are your morals, what are your values. He mentioned spending 3 hours on the first date, so he's really trying to dig into it, just figure out who that
Why
person
am I
is.
with this person sitting in this room? Yeah, I like that.
How I almost feel like it takes time though to like really get, because anybody can
to the
say
nitty-gritty.
Anybody can say what you want to hear,
right? Nobody's them their actual selves on a first date,
right? I mean, you're going to be your best self on the first date.
Your best self, right?
Yeah.
Or at least what you think is your best self.
Yeah, so I would want to like.
Yeah, I think it's you have to peel away those layers, and I think it takes a few days. And he's not saying that like within 3 hours of being on the first date with his future wife that he knew right then and there he wanted to marry her. He was just giving an example, I think, of 3 hours.
And
Dude,
so
I mean, my relationship's never gone that deep. I have not analyzed anything like that. So
yeah, well, I mean,
I think I need to.
You have to first decide whether you think it's time in your life to get serious about marriage, and if it is, then you have to ask.
You'll
those
need
questions.
like a whole 3-hour session with Ben after this test on that topic.
So anyway, we were to get back to the story. We were dating for 2.5 months before we got engaged, and that was pretty funny actually. Like maybe 2 months in. Actually, so our first date was September 5th, and we got engaged December 22nd.
Was she at all surprised?
So 3.5 months. She was not surprised when we got engaged. What was really funny is that, so a couple of things happened. One, about mid-November, November 15th. I remember all the dates. November 15th, it was the first time I said I love you to my wife, and she said thank you. And I was like, yeah. So that was, and that lasted for about a month. That was a very awkward month. It was like I'd finish every phone call, I'd be like, love you, sweetheart. Thanks. Bye. So that was real awkward. And then, but the reason she was doing that, and it made sense, is because of what happened next, right? December 15th, she says to me, I love you too. And I said, and she knew what was going to happen. She said, then the next words out of my mouth were, okay, let's get married. Like, we're done. Okay. And she's like, I love you. You love me. We're done. Let's get married. Let's have kids. Let's have a life together. And she goes, let's just enjoy this time. So I'm not enjoying this time. This is miserable for me. Like, what are you talking about? There's nothing for, if you're a religious person dating for marriage, the worst thing is the dating. The dating and the engagement sucks. Then you actually get to get married. Like if you're a religious person, then you get to get married, you get to sleep with the person, you get to live with the person, build a life. But like that's all the rest of this is just delay. So it
does seem like it was
right. It's part of his religion.
Yeah, part of his religion. And I can understand why he didn't he wanted to get moving
because then
he's not having sex.
Well, that's not the only reason.
I mean, that's a good reason to put a flame on your butt.
It's a strong incentive.
She's like, why don't we enjoy this? I'm like, you don't understand. I'm not enjoying this at all. This sucks. Like, I want to lock this down. We'll be done. It'll be great. This will be over, this period of our life. And so she was like, well, let's just think about it. A week later, we got engaged. So it took her about a week to adjust. And that was because she was 20 at the time. And so she was afraid of telling her parents, like they didn't expect her to get married that fast.
Sure.
And so she was afraid of telling her parents at the time that she was engaged or that she was going to get engaged. And she was afraid of what people would say and all this kind of stuff. And actually the most romantic thing she ever said to me, I was talking to her and it was a Shabbat. It was a Saturday. And I was staying over at this kind of co-op that she lived at. And we were talking and I was saying to her, like, is there a reason why we shouldn't get married? Really? And she was like, what? And she finally realized that the reason that she was holding off is because she was afraid of what other people were going to say and how other people were going to judge her for it. And so she turned to me and she said, people are so full of shit. And then we got engaged. And so we got engaged in December. So anyway, we'd scheduled our wedding for July. We were married on July 8th. And when and during that intervening period, she could see I was becoming more and more miserable at the job, like just hated the job. So I bought a condo in preparation for us getting married and moving in. And so we took a mortgage. And then I came home one day and I just said, this is miserable. This is the worst. I hate this law firm. I don't want to be doing this. It's garbage. And she said, you should quit. And so we have a mortgage and we have costs. And she said, I don't care. You should quit. You're miserable. You should quit. And so I said, okay. And so I went in the next day and I quit. And again, that was kind of a funny story. I walked in and the pay when you get out of Harvard Law School and you're an associate is really good. Like your first year pay is very good. You have to make up for the fact that you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Mm-hmm. So the law firms pay you a not insignificant amount of money. And so I walked in and I said to the senior associate, I'm quitting. I hate this. This is the worst. I can't stand it. And he starts trying to talk me out of it. And he calls in another senior associate to come and try and talk me out of it. This other senior associate had played some minor league baseball. And so he's sitting there and he starts telling me about how he played minor league baseball. And then he got into the law and I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I hate this. This is miserable. I don't even know what you guys do all day. Like, this just seems like a terrible job. And the senior associate turns to the other senior associate and goes, he's totally right. I hate this job. This job is terrible. And so the other senior associate had to talk both of us out of quitting. He succeeded with one of them. Did not succeed with me. I walk into the partner's office and I tell him, like, I'm out. This is terrible. I don't want to be here. And the partner was not happy. And he says to me, I just want you to know this is the most money you're ever going to earn in your life. And I've been wanting to send him tax returns for for a solid period of time, for solidly 15 to 20 years. I've been wanting to send that dude some tax returns. So anyway,
well, yeah, but he probably motivated you too.
Oh, it was great. I mean, like he was a jerk, but it was a motivating factor. Motivation is not hard for me to find. I tend to be a pretty driven. My motor runs a lot. So that was. So anyway, I ended up quitting. I picked up a job at Talk Radio Network, which was the syndicator for Laura Ingraham and Michael Savage at the time on radio. And the job was I would be in-house counsel, but the deal was I said to the owner of the company, I'll only be in-house counsel for you half the day. The other half of the day, I want to learn the production side of radio. So I would actually sit there and I'd cut the audio on the audio program. I would put together kind of a rundown for various people's shows. I would read articles for them and highlight them, get up at 4:30 in the morning and do that sort of stuff. And meantime, I was still writing my books and coming out with books that time under my own name. But this is one of the things about,
Jesus, this guy.
Yeah.
Grinds.
Extremely driven.
Yeah. He grinds.
Really
grinds
driven.
and grinds and
right.
grinds.
And knows hard work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So to be hired as in-house counsel by a major syndicate and also say, you know what, I'll only do it if I can do like the nitty-gritty stuff and actually learn the production side of it. So he is every foresight and yeah. So far, mad.
When you see a company like the one that we built, that's become very big, people see the size of the company. They don't see the laboring and obscurity for 10 years, selling books out of the back of your car.
Yeah.
Literally, my wife remembers us going to like local Republican clubs with a box of books in the back of my car that I gotten free from the publisher. And if you sold like 10 of those in a day, you were so happy. Like, oh my God, I made $200 today. That's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And so we can go to dinner. Like, this is great. So anyway, I took that job for $60,000 a year as in-house counsel and producer, which was a massive pay cut from the law firm. And then sort of worked my way up until I was executive vice president of that company. Meanwhile, I was ghostwriting a lot of books at the time. Also, I became known as sort of the quick fix ghostwriter. So famous people would need to write a book. They don't know how to write a book because they're famous, and so they would call me in to write the book, and they'd give me like no time to do it. It'd be like, you have a month to churn out 60,000 words by X person. Okay, so I was cobbling together a decent income by doing many jobs at one time. And so I was doing all of that. I ended up latching on doing a radio show in Los Angeles and a radio show in Seattle. I became editor at large of Breitbart when Andrew Breitbart was still alive. He and I had been friends for a long time by that point. And so basically, before we founded this company, my day was I did 6 hours of radio a day. I was the editor at large of Breitbart, writing for them and doing a little bit of editing. I was the editor of Truth Revolt. I was ghostwriting books, and I was writing books and doing speeches of my own. So I was doing like 5 or 6 jobs at one time before we ended up launching Daily Wire. So,
how did that? What was the inception of that? The Daily Wire.
Daily Wire. So Jeremy, the inception was really me and my business partner Jeremy Boring. We have a third business partner named Caleb Robinson who.
And what
came in.
year was this as well?
So the Daily Wire was founded in 2015. I had known Jeremy since 2010. Is it 2010 or 2011? That was because when I was working at Talk Radio Network, there was a secret underground Hollywood conservative group called Friends of Abe. It's supposed to be a takeoff on Friends of Dorothy, which were like when gay people in Hollywood weren't allowed to speak openly about being gay, they called themselves Friends of Dorothy. So Friends of Abe was like you're an underground Hollywood person who's conservative. And so you're a friend of Abe Lincoln, right? So Friends of Abe. So Jeremy was one of the people who was heading up Friends of Abe, and he was making $0 a year and doing a lot of work for free. And I was working at Talk Radio Network, and my boss at Talk Radio Network was interested in doing movies. And so he said, Ben, you should talk with Jeremy. Well, Jeremy and I hit it off, became very close friends, did a couple of kind of small-time business ventures together, and then ended up working together at Truth Revolt, which was sort of the precursor to Daily Wire. Truth Revolt was supposed to be Media Matters in reverse. So Media Matters is designed to take away advertising from right-wing shows by astroturfing boycotts. And so what we said is we don't like that tactic. We hate that tactic. And we're going to stop that tactic from being used by essentially creating mutually assured destruction. Until the left understands that this is a bad tactic, we will do it to you and we'll see how you like it. And so we were fairly successful at doing that. Like we knocked out Alec Baldwin off the air on MSNBC and Martin Bashir off the air on MSNBC. It was a part of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. So Jeremy, I ran the editorial side on Truth Revolt, which was sort of a news website and also an activist site. And Jeremy sort of did the business side of that. And it was a subsection of a nonprofit called the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Well, we had been working there for a couple of years. It was from like 2013 to 2015, 2015. And there came a point where Jeremy came to me and he said, listen, I have this idea. I've really been studying marketing. I really think that the conservative movement does not know how to market. This is our big shortcoming, is we do not know how to market. And I have this idea, and the idea is that we need to raise a budget and spend an awful lot of money on marketing. And so we went to the board of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and we tried to explain this to them. And there was this meeting, and boards of nonprofits are typically staffed by very elderly, large-scale donors. And so this board was people who were very wealthy and rather old. And so we're sitting there trying to explain to them tech. And Jeremy, who is known as the stupid whisperer, because I speak very fast and I'm a Jew who uses big words and speaks very quickly. And Jeremy is a Southern Texan who speaks very slowly with a soft lilt. So in a meeting with one congressperson who shall remain nameless, I remember I was trying to explain something, and this congressperson was just glazing over, and Jeremy said the exact same thing, but slower. And this congressperson suddenly understood. And so that's how Jeremy earned the nickname, the stupid whisperer. Anyway, Jeremy was stupid whispering the board. And he was like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the money and we're going to spend it here and here. And finally, for like an hour, and they refused to understand. And finally, one of them turned to me and they said, what's your plan? What do you want to do? And I said, okay, here's our plan. I was mad because it'd been like an hour of wasted time. And I took a napkin and I wrote on the napkin, $arrow, Facebook, arrow, website, arrow back to $. And I said, this is our business plan. We're going to spend money on Facebook. We're going to use Facebook marketing in order to jack up traffic on the website. We're going to take advertising and subscription revenue back to money, and we're going to do it over and over again. It's going to be a money machine. That's how it's going to work. So that was our entire business plan. They fired Jeremy the next day, and I quit in solidarity. And we took that exact business plan. We walked across the street, and we founded Daily Wire. So we had a meeting with our initial funders, and the initial funding for the company was about $4.7 million in angel investment. We were cash flow positive at 18 months in, and we have been operating off cash flow ever since. And we'll do $200 million in business this year.
Wow, that's
so
impressive.
thank God. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what was like the first thing?
That's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Cash flow positive, 18 months. I think we can call it there
Okay.
for tonight. There wasn't much to actually react to or much to
Yeah,
comment on.
I think it's because this is such a good interview. It's very telling about who he is. I feel like, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't seen many of his interviews, but I feel like this is more like in depth of like who he is.
Yeah.
Versus like something political and people want to drain it out and speak at it ad nauseum
Sure.
and get his point of it and make it a controversial situation.
Yeah, so it's just a different type of interview.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
More laid back, more kind of.
But like just more about him and who he is as a person and how he grew up, and I think that's really telling. And also, he's obviously very engaging.
Yeah.
He has that aspect of him. So yeah, so I don't think there's really. I like feel bad interrupting just to interject with my commentary because.
Yeah.
You know?
He's just doing obviously he does.
Yeah.
This is what he gets paid to do. He gets
Sure.
paid to talk about stuff. He's just an entertaining person to watch.
Yeah.
So the next video, I guess we'll just continue on.
Sure.
And maybe there'll be more to react to.
Sounds good.
Okay.